All right, man, Torture Talk. Like, share, subscribe to the page. Hit the thumbs up button if you like the content. Hey, man. Zack Snyder. So recently, Zack Snyder, a couple of weeks ago, he has had the SnyderCon. And I wanted to talk about that. I didn't get a chance to because I took a little hiatus, but I'm back now. I want to talk about where I believe Snyder stands, the Snyderverse. Do I believe it's dead? Do I believe it's still alive? I don't know. So let's get into it. All right, so the number one question on most people's mind is the Snyderverse still alive? And my answer is yes, and the reason why is because money is money, right? But I have a different opinion on it too, and I'm going to give you two different answers. And this is what it is. I believe the Snyderverse is still alive because they're still using some of Snyder's characters, right? That's the reason why I said it's still alive. Now, the way they go about it is something different. Do I believe that they will bring Zack Snyder back and continue his vision? No one knows. Who knows? I think at this point, no. And the reason why is because I believe that studios are going to accept that superhero movies are not making as much money as they used to. It's not the big cash cow as it used to be. And I don't know if Snyder movies are expensive to the point where they're not going to, recoup the money back. So most of them are going to go with the cheaper route, and they're going to go the cheaper way out. Because the thing about Zack Snyder's movies is he's in tune with his movies. He is in it. It ain't like, oh, he's just a director. No, he's more than that. He does everything, camera work and all that stuff. Photos, all that. So I think that the Snyderverse could continue if somehow DC makes enough money to afford Zack Snyder, if that makes sense. I don't think that DC is going to make money anymore like that. It's the same as I don't believe that Marvel is going to make any more money. I do fall into that category that the superhero genre has been on a decline for a while, and it's because of Phase 4, Marvel Phase 4. When they decided to bring in the woke elements and turn all the characters into misogynistic villains or whatever you want to call it, and all the females triumph, when they started to bring that in, and they started to bring those type of writers in, not to take nothing away from female empowerment, but comic books are different because everybody plays their role. So you should have people who play their roles as what they are. When you start to change the genders of the characters just to appease a certain demographic of people who really don't even support the movies, that's when you run into a problem. And I think that most people now are looking at all of these comic book movies as just propaganda. They want to go for escapism into, it's like going on a roller coaster when you go see these movies. They want to go for the big action sequences, the special effects, and all that stuff. But now when they go there, if they feel like they're going to see these movies and they're being preached at by a writer who is an activist, who is basically telling you how he feels and what he believes this character should be and totally changing the arc of the character, then nobody wants to see that. You might have a few people, but the majority of the comic book people in that world who love these characters, they're not going to want to see that. So do I believe that they're going to bring Zack Snyder back? It's possible, but it's highly unlikely because superhero movies are on their way out. That's just the bottom line. And I'm going to keep it real. I mean, people are excited for Superman Legacy and all this stuff. Okay, cool. But judging off of Homeboy's last work, I don't think it's going to be no groundbreaking thing. You know, you're retelling the same story over again. That's another thing that's killing the genre. But the Snyderverse is probably the most important thing in comic book history, movie history right now, outside of Endgame. For DC, I mean. For DC, restoring the Snyderverse is the only way that DC is going to accomplish something. I don't care who they bring in. If you reboot the whole thing and just X the Snyderverse, majority of the people that went to see the movies were Snyder fans. Majority of the movies that were successful was Snyder movies. Matter of fact, all the movies except for Aquaman, they were all successful. Now you might say it didn't reach $1 billion, but only one of them did. Well, two, there's the Joker and Aquaman. Aquaman and Joker is that's a whole different thing. But Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, and we don't know what Zack Snyder Justice League did because it didn't come out in the movies. But either way, those movies had people go see them. But the newer ones, no, they haven't. And I know people hate Suicide Squad, and they hate the Suicide Squad. I know people that do. So my biggest deal is, should they restore the Snyderverse? They should have did that right after they seen the success of Zack Snyder's Justice League. They should have been planning that. It should have been written in wherever and said, listen, no matter what happens, these two movies have to be made. So even when people say, well, Zack Snyder and the rest of them, what happened was they were sold. And Dave Zaslav came along. Dave Zaslav should have recognized that people were demanding to see the Snyderverse. So I don't know if he got ambushed by James Gunn or somebody or whoever, but he should have been alert and said, wait a minute, what is this doing over here? Oh, Zack Snyder's there? Oh, we need to continue this. Because this is what everybody wants to see. But I think that most of the people came into this world believing that DC was a failure and it was behind Marvel. In all actuality, it wasn't that much behind Marvel. When Snyder was doing his thing, it wasn't. It wasn't that much behind Marvel. It just Marvel produced more movies because they had a studio. That's another thing that people not recognize and not saying it. Marvel had a studio for years. DC didn't have a studio. So DC didn't come out with as many movies. But Marvel did. Marvel has, 30 something or more movies? DC only has like maybe 15 or something like that. So they like almost double their movies. So they making movies one after another. This is the reason why Marvel was where it was at. Because they kept producing, kept people in tune. DC made a movie once a year, once every 2 years, every 3 years or whatever. So that comparison to me is stupid. You know what I'm saying? For people to compare the two and say, well, Marvel's more, yeah, of course. They have more movies. Of course. But I believe if they had the same amount of movies running at the same time, they probably would have made the same amount of money. Because people still went to see Superman and they went to see Batman, Batman vs. Superman. So they would have made the same amount of money if they would have kept going in different versions. And I believe that if they would have kept going at this point, most people would have stuck with DC over Marvel. I believe that 100%. Because I'm looking at the dynamics of the last good DC movie was Zack Snyder's Justice League. The last good Marvel movie was Endgame. Really good, I'm saying. Endgame. Endgame was a while ago. Zack Snyder's Justice League just came out a couple of years, maybe 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, the last couple of movies, the last movies that Marvel made, don't even compare to Zack Snyder's Justice League. So If Justice League 2 and 3 would have went on, I believe they would have overtook Marvel easily. But they didn't do it. So, do I believe that Zack Snyder's Justice League should go on? Absolutely believe it should go on. I believe that the Snyderverse should continue and should move on. But do I believe it's going to happen? At this point, nobody knows. But if I had to choose, I'm going to say no, because it's a money issue. That's number one, I believe. And superhero fatigue has set in, and I don't know if it's going to affect. Well, we wouldn't know if it would affect Zack Snyder because he didn't make another movie, as far as Justice League. I mean, as far as Marvel, DC goes. So we wouldn't know. But from what I'm seeing, I think that at this point, I'm hoping that one day the Snyderverse will continue. But these people are getting older, and I'm sure that a lot of these characters are not going to want to play the character anymore. And it's like, what's going to happen in 3 years from now? You're going to get Ben Affleck to come back to play Batman, and then you get Henry Cavill to come back to play Superman. I think that Warner Brothers dropped the ball on that, and I think that they're going to regret that for the rest. I think that this is the end of them, and I don't care what they come out after this. Them not continuing the Snyderverse has actually killed their brand. I'm sorry. So, hey, Torture Talk, you know what it is.